Now I lost it.
Okay. I'm going to mute everybody. Good morning. Feel free to unmute yourselves at any point in time if you have something worthwhile to say, but only if you have something worthwhile to say. Otherwise, don't just kidding. Okay. So we are studying the Ramchal, the Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and his classic text, The Path of the Just. And we are on page 71 in the edition that we're using. And we're talking about the way you would approach somebody if you were going to try to convince them of the importance of practicing Zihirus. And just to remind all of us, Zihirus is that quality where we live our lives in a focused, intentional way. Or as we said before, we're living the examined life, where we're not just going through our regular routine in a robotic form or a robotic way, but we're actually thinking about our lives, reassessing, continuously reevaluating our actions and our thoughts and our words and our choices to make sure that they're consistent with our values that we've identified. And wait, let me just, sorry, somebody's trying to reach me. And so yeah, so that's what Zihirus is all about. And then the question is, how do you convince somebody that Zihirus is a worthwhile way to live your life? So he said that it really depends on who you're approaching. So if you're approaching what he referred to as people who have a wholesome perspective, meaning that they pretty much get it already. They don't need a lot of convincing. They don't need a lot of explanation. So then you basically just, kind of explain it to them, the value of living this way, and they will jump on board and they will, quickly kind of appreciate what it means to live this life, and they will sign on. But that's not 99.999% of mankind, at least not in our day and age. Maybe at the time that the Ramchal wrote this book, there were people like that. Actually, I'm just going to close the door 1 second. But today it's different. Today it's people we live in a much more a relative world where we're going to talk a lot about today about truth. We live in a world today where there's not a high premium placed on truth. People are much more focused on comfort, convenience, those types of things. But back in the day, even like earlier on, like in the Baal Tshuva movement, this movement that sort of began in the late 60s, where Jewish people started returning to their Jewish roots, Jewish religion, Jewish tradition. But back in the 60s, the 70s, even in the 80s, when I sort of caught on in the early 90s, back then it was like the approach to kiruv, as we call it, or Jewish outreach, was you sit down with somebody, you prove to them that there has to be a God, because it only logically makes sense that there has to be a God. You give them all the evidence that the Torah is a divine document representing God's infinite will. And, a large percentage of people would then at that point say, okay, I guess you're right, it makes sense. And they would become observant. That was in the glory days of the outreach Baal Tshuva movement. Today, it doesn't work like that at all. Today, it's not at all about truth. It's not all about evidence. It's not at all about what's logical, what makes sense. It's much more and really kind of only about how is this going to make my life better? Where am I going to benefit from this? How is this going to add value to my life? And therefore, the role of a kiruv professional, an outreach professional today, is not to prove to anybody or share any evidence about the divine origins of the Torah, but rather to show and to demonstrate to people why Torah lifestyle is something that adds meaning and value to your life. Okay, so that's interesting little side point over here. So when you're talking to people who are, the type of people that we know, it's not enough just to say, hey, here's how it is, these are the facts, and jump on board. You need to show them a little bit more viscerally. You need to explain to people in a way that's going to really resonate with them. So here's where the Ramchal picks up. And he says on page 71, but for those on a lesser level than this first group, their inspiration must be achieved according to their level of discernment, meaning that it must be based upon the concept of the honor that they crave. Now, I think what he's saying over here is he's referring to, honor, kavod, respect, being looked up to, being admired, which is something that every human being wants and needs and yearns for on some level. Some people more, some people less, but it's really it's something that this is just one example, let's say, but it's a real human need. So if you want to convince somebody that they should live a life of zehirus, you have to basically tap into their lower desires, their desire to be respected, their desire to be honored, their desire to be famous, or their desire to be put up on some kind of pedestal. And if you can convince people that that living this way is going to get you more of those things that you want in life, then you're going to have success. But it's not really about these people are not people that are striving for spiritual perfection. The first group of people that were striving for spiritual perfection, that's a tall order. I don't think nowadays, I don't think we're striving for spiritual perfection. We're striving for spiritual growth. Perfection is a little bit out of our grasp at this point in time. But what we're hoping for is a little bit of spiritual growth, a little bit of a spiritual advancement. And for people like this, he continues, he said, this motivation is as follows. It's obvious to any sensible person that the levels of accomplishment and reward are not distinguished from each other in the world of truth, which is the world to come, except in accordance with one's deeds in this world, and that only one who has more good deeds to his credit than does his fellow will be higher in status there. And conversely, he who has fewer good deeds to his credit will be the lowly one. Okay, so what does he mean here? So talking about status. Now, we think about status, status is something that is, something that people seek on some level. I remember traveling with somebody once back from Israel, and he was so proud of himself because he had status on United Airlines. Happened to be a very cool thing because his status on United Airlines gave him access to the lounge, and we were able to go in there and sleep for a couple hours on the layover, and you have all kinds of food and everything. But people want status, whether it's it's simple like something like status on United Airlines, or it's just status overall, like in the social network of our lives. We want to be respected, we want to have status, and status is something that drives a lot of what we do, whether we realize it or not. We choose careers and professions based on what we think is going to give us more status in society. And it's just kind of built into us and ingrained into us. So the truth is that the system in Olam Haba, in the world to come, works the same way. There's status there too. Okay, so just in case you thought that maybe somehow you're going to be able to escape that reality when you leave this world, Ramchal is telling us, no, even in the world to come, there's such a thing as status. And what is status based on in the world to come? It's based solely and entirely on your accomplishments, your spiritual accomplishments in this world. Not your physical accomplishments, not your material accomplishments, not how high you climbed up the particular corporate ladder, or not how much money you made, or not what type of house you have, but it's based on spiritual accomplishments. The Talmud says that one of the great sages of the Talmud, he was on his deathbed, and we know that when you're sort of teetering between two worlds, you get certain spiritual insight, and you can sort of peek into into the next world a little bit when you're on the edge between the two worlds. And they asked this particular rabbi who was in that state, he was sort of on his way into transitioning into the next world. What do you see? They asked this rabbi, what do you see? And he said something amazing. He said, I see an olam hafuch. I see an upside down world. What did he mean by that? He went on and explained, I see a world, and he was describing what he saw in the next world. He said, I saw a world where in the world where I'm looking at now, the people that were on the top in this world are on the bottom in that world. And the people that were on the bottom in this world are on the top in that world. And that's what he said. Those were his final words. And he laughed. This world. But the way I think we understand that is generally the people that are on top in our world, there's two worlds. We live in the world of sheker, the world of falsehood, the world of illusion. The next world is called olam ha'emes, the world of truth. So in the olam ha'sheker, in the world of falsehood and illusion, status is not based on real, true greatness or spiritual accomplishments or moral achievements or personal internal integrity or greatness. It's based on external factors like who makes the most money, who's got the best job, who's got the most followers on Instagram, okay, or whatever it is. But that's not real status. That's status in the olam ha'sheker. That's status in the world of illusion. Status in the world of emes, in the world of truth, in the world to come, is based only on the thoughts, the words, the actions, the choices that I make in this world. To the degree that I'm making good choices and I'm growing spiritually and I'm being more selfless and I'm being more godlike and I'm committing to spiritual growth, and I'm, as a Jew, it means I'm keeping the Torah, the mitzvot in the Torah, and I'm growing spiritually. That's achieving. That's how I gain status in the world to come. You know, that's how I get this thing called status. But whatever it is, it's still a real thing. Okay. So if you're talking to somebody in this world and you're trying to explain to them the next world, you use this idea of status and you tell them, look, you know, just like in this world, it's really important to you to be on the top, or at least not to be on the bottom of the social strata. You don't want to be, you know, the lowest level of society. You want to be somewhere like the upper middle or to the top. Well, guess what? That's going to continue in the world to come. You're also going to be embarrassed in the world to come. In fact, when we talk about hell, heaven and hell, you know, everyone says hell is not a Jewish idea. Well, it is and it isn't. Hell, as described in, let's say, Christian sources, that there's some terrible place somewhere, you know, on the bottom of the earth, and it's hot there, and you go there and you burn, and that's of course that's not our view, but there is such a concept of hell in the sense that you can live for eternity. If you make it to the world to come, you live for eternity with the reality of living on the status that you achieved and accomplished for yourself when you were in this world. And at that point, when you're in the olam ha'emes, when you're in the world of truth, all that really matters to you and all that accomplishes and achieves higher levels of status for you are what you did in this world. And you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, if I had just dedicated a little bit more time to doing chesed, or if I had just dedicated a little bit more time to learning Torah, or if I had just been a little bit more generous with my time or my resources, then I would be where that guy is for eternity. And instead I'm here. And that experience is the reality of what we would refer to in Jewish, from a Jewish point of view, as being hell. Okay? Because it's a living for eternity with an understanding that I could have achieved greater closeness for eternity. And instead, I locked in my status where I did. So that's what you have to sit down to explain to somebody. And then what you tell them is, and by the way, if you want to live a life where you're making the right choices and your words are measured and consonant with your values, and your actions and your thoughts and everything you're living the best you, and you're living consistently with your higher self and with with your noble spirit. How do I get there? Well, the only way you can get there is by practicing Zahirus. That's the point. That's how you would convince somebody on a regular run-of-the-mill type of person why it's worth practicing Zahirus. Because in the world to come, it's all about your status, but your status is all determined by the good choices that you make in this world. And the only way to make those right choices and to know that you're constantly growing is if you're living an examined life. If you're consistently reassessing your values and recalculating your actions vis-a-vis those values to make sure that they're consistent with who you want to be and what you're trying to achieve in this world. So that's how you would approach somebody on a lower level. And if so, let's just finish this paragraph and then we can discuss it. If so, then how can a person avert his eyes from careful scrutiny of his deeds? Meaning this is the corollary, or reduce his efforts in this regard. If afterward, when he leaves this world and the time for divine reckoning arrives, he will certainly be distressed as a result of his inattention at a time when he is no longer able to repair that what he has corrupted. Remember, one of the analogies we used in the very beginning is, once you're on the plane, you can't upgrade anymore. You can't upgrade to business class. You had that option before you bought your ticket, even after you bought your ticket. When you were in the airport, when you were at the counter, the check-in counter, you can still upgrade at that point. But once you get on the plane, you can't upgrade anymore. And you can bribe the flight attendants as much as you want, but it's not going to help. So that is that's the idea over here. And the more we understand this, that our olam haba, that our world to come, is determined by the quality of our choices and our thoughts and our words and our actions in this world, then the easier it's going to be for me to latch on to the notion of practicing Zahirus, because I'm going to understand that without Zahirus, I really don't have much of a fighting chance in this attempt. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Yeah, that's very daunting. I mean, perspective. I mean, it gives a very interesting perspective we have with this one short opportunity, and it makes you feel like you really got to get going quick because you want to add value to yourself, right? So, yeah, they're interesting. Yeah. Daunting, kind of.
It is a little bit daunting, and I guess question to try to figure out. And I don't know the answer to this question, but how do you turn something which is daunting into motivating? Daunting is a negative emotion.
Not really daunting, more maybe inspiring, motivating, I guess, would be a better way.
Yeah, but I think your use of the choice of the word daunting is a good one in some ways, because I think this can produce two reactions. This can produce a sort of feeling of like, this is daunting, and daunting is sort of a paralysis of sorts. Like when I feel daunted, I feel overwhelmed by something, and I don't know where to begin, and I feel stuck and overwhelmed. So how do I use this information not to overwhelm myself and to sort of result in a sort of paralysis, but to motivate myself to see like, wow, I have a short amount of time, and I really do want to take advantage of it.
So Rabbi, how does tshuva fit into this situation? This especially tshuva later in life.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's very, very, very much directly related to this, because tshuva is the great gift. Tshuva is the great gift from Hashem. The Ramchal himself is going to say this later on, that tshuva is the greatest chesed that Hashem did for us, that he gave us the ability to fix that which we broke. If Hashem ran the world according to the strict letter of the law, with no flexibility, with no latitude in his justice, then tshuva wouldn't be a possibility. You broke something, sorry man, You did something terrible. You made a bad choice. You hurt somebody. You did something that you regret. Sorry, you did it. What do you want me to do? I can't take it away. Just like in a physical sense, like if you drink a can of of rat poison, regretting it afterwards isn't going to do anything. The person's going to die. Okay, so tshuva is amazing. Tshuva is an incredible chesed on Hashem's part that He allows us, as long as I'm still alive, as long as my eyes are still open, as long as I'm still functioning in this world with an intelligence and capacity to think and act, and I can do tshuva. I can repair it spiritually. I can rehabilitate myself. I can fix what I've done wrong. And if it's done right, and if it's done sincerely, it wipes out all of the negative actions that I'm applying the tshuva to. And if it's done with love, if it's done out of love instead of out of fear, in other words, not just as a result of like, oh wow, I'm going to get big punishment if I don't do tshuva, but more like, if I do tshuva, I'm going to be able to get closer to Hashem. If that's what's motivating me, not only does it wipe out the negative stuff, but it actually flips that negative stuff into positive stuff. So tshuva is an amazing tool that's always available for us. That's why it's never too late. That's why in Judaism we never say, well, what can I do? I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70, I'm 80, and I've done what I've done. It's not true. You can always do tshuva and reinvent yourself at any point, as long as you're able to think and act. Yeah.
David, it's interesting. In this world, whether we think we're humble or not, I agree, we always seek status in whatever we're doing. But in the spiritual world, we're supposed to run away from it. And it's totally different. You do what you want to do, not because you're seeking status.
Right. So I think that's an amazing insight that the Ramchal is telling us over here, and one that I would not have necessarily thought would be the case on my own. But what he's telling us over here is that even in the physical, even in the spiritual realm, even in the world to come, there is still a concept of status. The only difference is that it's an olam hafuch, it's an upside down world. So all the things that give a person status in this world of sheker, in this world of falsehood and illusion, are the exact things that take away from a person's status in the world to come. And all the things that give a person low status in this world are the things that build a person's status in the world to come. So there is still a concept, there still is a hierarchy, right? And he's gonna spell this out a little bit more even. But the higher, but what determines where you fall out in that status is the exact opposite of what determines that status in this world, right? In this status, in this world, it's about what you have. The next world, it's about what you gave, right? That's the famous story about one of the great philanthropists. They say it about Baron Rothschild. That's what they told about Moses Montefiore. Pick your famous philanthropist, plug in his name. But the story goes that basically they came and the government audited him, and they said, show us how much you're worth. We want to know your net worth. We don't think you're paying taxes. And he provided a number for them. And they said, oh, this is ridiculous. You're lying. You're worth way more than this. He said, well, you asked what I'm worth. So what I showed you is the amount of tzedakah that I've given in my life, because that's what I'm worth, because that's all I can take with me into the world to come. If you want to know how much money I've made in this world, that's a different question. I'll tell you that. There's a different book that has that, makes that account. But if you want to know what I'm worth what I've given away. So in this world, it's about what I have, what I've earned, and what I've acquired. In the next world, what determines my status is about what I gave, what I gave away. Yeah.
Isn't he also saying that it's spiritual status, which kind of relates to your closeness to Hashem for eternity, and you're going to kind of lock in at that level? Yeah, whatever you achieve in this life puts you at a certain spiritual status, which really is a parallel for your closeness.
Yes, exactly. That is what the status is. The status is the closeness. That's what determines the access to a infinite light that I have for eternity. It's all about access to the infinite light. It's about how much of that I'm able to access. There's an infinite amount of closeness available, and it's determined entirely by me. How much I'm able to access is determined by, the status that I lock in, which is determined by my choices and my thoughts and words and actions. Let's take it one more step. Now, he says on page 72 in the middle. Now, there are some foolish people who want only to lighten the burden of divine service from upon themselves. So he's already telling us the motivation of these foolish people. Their motivation is to make things easy, right? To lighten the burden. If your main goal in life is to lighten the burden, make things easy for yourself, then the Ramchal calls you a fool. And they will say, well, why should we weary ourselves with so much piety and abstinence? Is it not sufficient that we will not be numbered among the wicked who are judged in Gehenna, purgatory, whatever? We will not push ourselves to enter the innermost sanctions of Gan Eden, of the Garden of Eden. If I will not have a large portion there, we'll have at least a small portion, for this is sufficient. We will not make the yoke of our burden heavier in this world because of this pursuit of the highest level of the reward in the world to come. Okay, so this is the idea that it's enough to be it's enough to be in the park. I don't have to be sitting behind the dugout. So and they'll quote you, these people. By the way, who are these people? You and you and me, you and you and you and me, every one of us. Okay, just so you know, that's all of us. We are that person. We are those fools. I hate to say it, but at least I'm including myself into the good company over here, because we all have that on some level. All have that on some level, and we all know by heart the very famous saying from Pirkei Avot. The saying that says, "Kol Yisrael yesh lam chilek l'olam haba." All the Jewish people, all of Am Yisrael has a share in the world to come, right? I'm guaranteed a share in the world. All I have to do to get a share in the world to come is not be a horrible person. Yeah, I can handle that. That I can manage. And if I'm not a horrible person and I'm overall pretty good, then I'll have a share in the world to come. Okay? So all I have to do is not be a Russia, not be a wicked person. So I won't be sitting in the infield box seats. I'll be sitting in the upper decks behind the obstructed view, with a big pole in front of me with the nosebleed seats. But what does that really matter? What matters is I'm in the park, right? I'm in the game. I'm in the park. So the Ramchal is saying, baloney. You know that's not true. You don't live your life that way. You don't live your life that way in this world. You know that's not true. People who say that, meaning all of us at different times and different stages in our lives, are really just looking to lighten the burden. He says these are people who are looking to lighten the burden of divine service from upon themselves. I don't really want to deal with all of the responsibilities that go along with what I have to do to get a seat in the infield. It's going to mean that I have to give up so much, and it's going to mean that I have to be generous with my time and be generous with my resources, and it means I'm going to have to do things I don't want to do, or when I don't want to do them, and there's going to be things that I want to do, but I'm not going to be able to do them at certain times. I don't need all that. I'm not a Russia. I'm not a horrible person. I'll be in the ballpark. Should be fine. So the Ramchal says, no, you're fooling yourself. You're not being real. You don't live your life that way in this world, and it's not going to be any different in the world to come. Nobody really believes this. Okay, no one really believes this. It's a classic rationalization of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination, which is there to justify and rationalize our lack of interest in our fear of doing the hard work and commitment and sacrifice necessary for spiritual growth. Okay, so that's what he's calling us all out on. And he says, here's the fallacy of the argument. Let us ask them one question about this defense of their behavior. So a person comes up to me and says, look, Rabbi, I don't have to, I'm not interested in status. I'm not I'm not a big status person. I don't really care. As long as I'm not a wicked guy, and as long as I end up in the ballpark, I'm in the stadium. I don't care where my seats are. So how do you debunk that the fallacy of that argument? So he says, would they be able to so easily bear even in this transient world, seeing one of their colleagues be more respected and esteemed than they and dominate them? And all the more so if one who attains superior status is one of their servants or one of the poor people who are disdained and lowly in their eyes. Would they be able to tolerate having inferior people command greater respect and admiration than them without being pained and without their blood boiling inside of them? What he's trying to do right now is he's trying to make it very real. Okay, he's trying to make it real. Imagine, and like, we got to be real over here. Okay, imagine someone who works for you, someone who works in your house, cleaning, someone who cleans your house. Okay, well, of course we all have respect for the people that clean their house, but like, okay, you're cleaning lady. Okay, now let's say like in a sudden sort of turn of events, she becomes very, very wealthy and powerful, and whatever happens to you and you become, very poor and economically challenged, and all of a sudden you find yourself that you're all of a sudden cleaning her, 7,000 square foot house, for $40 an hour. Okay, how are you going to feel about that? Be real. You're okay with that? I'm cool with that. Look, it's, doesn't matter to me whether I'm the one with the house and she's cleaning it, or she's the one with the house and I'm cleaning it. We're all here. We're all people. We're all the same. You're lying to yourself. No one really believes that. You're not going to be okay with that. Okay. Or what if a rival at work, somebody who you work better, you work harder than them, you're more committed than them, you're more disciplined than them, you're smarter than them, and all of a sudden they get promoted to the vice president of sales, and they demote you and send you out to work in the warehouse. I'm fine with that. I'm totally cool with that. That's not going to bother me at all. Yes, it is. It is. Promise you. And that's what the Ramchal is saying. That's the fallacy of this argument. That you're not okay with, even in this transient world, where how long am I here already? 70 years, 90 years, 100 years. It's temporary. And I'm not okay with that, even for a temporary existence. I'm certainly not going to be okay with that for eternal existence in the world to come. So we know this to be true, for indeed we can see with our own eyes all the toil that a person expends in this world to achieve superiority over whomever he can and to establish his place among the highest echelons of society. For this is man's rivalry with his fellow. That's King Solomon in Kohelet in Ecclesiastes. And if one sees his fellow elevated while he remains lowly, it is certain that whatever he bears is only what he is forced to bear, because he is unable to prevent it from occurring. But his heart smolders inside him in jealousy and bitterness. Okay, so he just made it very, very real over here, very real.
Well, the other thing is, in this world, there's always hope you can increase your status potentially, right? But in eternity, you don't even have that hope. So that makes it even more powerful, compelling.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's locked in. Now, okay, there are things that can happen. People in this world who you left behind who are doing mitzvahs on your behalf, on your benefit, that of course can elevate your status, but not, not like your own actions will.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
we obviously the merit, the credit that we achieve from our behavior in this world is the primary basis for our status in the world to come and olam haba. But we always use the expression, may their neshama have an aliyah, which means that it has to be impacted by learning or other mitzvos that someone in this world does on their behalf. So your position is not fixed.
That's absolutely true, and it's for sure it is impacted, and we have it when we say someone should have an aliyah in the neshama. It's real, we mean it, and that the neshama can be elevated, through, the actions of what they set into motion, the ripple effects of what they created in this world. That's all true. But even that's fixed in the sense that, it's whatever I set into motion, the ripple effects can accrue to me and elevate my status no longer above it. If I didn't set it into motion, then it's not too late. It's not gonna, whatever I didn't set into motion is not going to elevate my status. And we don't want to rely on that or wait for that, hope that's what's going to get us, better seats in the interview. We want to, lock in those seats. It's like, there's two ways to go to the Cubs game. You can go to the Cubs game like a big macher and you buy, seats and box seats in the infield, or you can do what I do and buy the absolute cheapest ticket you can possibly find, and then slowly make your way down a little bit more until finally the guards, come along and boot you out, and in that embarrassing moment where you get booted out of the seats and you have to go back, But like, you can choose, but you want to lock in those tickets while you can. Okay. Now let's keep going a little bit. From the bottom of 71 now. Now, if it is so hard for them to be more lowly than others with regard to their place in the illusory, false levels of this world, where any lowliness is only superficial, and any status is nothing but vanity and falsehood. But in this world, status is fake, status is illusion, is the olam hasheker, is the world of falsehood, the world of illusion. But even in this world of illusion where I know, like every one of us, we all know status is baloney. I feel like such a macher because I can walk into the United Lounge. Yeah, you're really a loser. You just happen to fly a lot. You're not such a status guy because you can walk into the United Lounge. But still, it feels like a status, and we right. But we know it's fake. We know it's illusion, and I still seek it. And I still want it, and I still pursue it, even though I know deep down inside that it's nothing but vanity and falsehood. So how will he be able to bear seeing themselves in the world of truth, classified as more lonely than those very men who are now in this world considered more lonely than they? And furthermore, this establishment of their inferiority will occur in the place of the true eminence and eternal honor, which although they do not yet appreciate it and its value, and they're therefore not concerned about it, but in its time, when they come to receive their eternal reward, they will certainly recognize its truth and very clearly to their pain of their embarrassment. This inferiority will certainly be for them nothing other than profound and everlasting source of pain. Meaning, even if I don't value now the covered, the status, true covered and status in the world to come, because it's not what interests me now, but when I get there, I will. And having not achieved what I could have achieved will certainly be a source of everlasting pain for me. Now it's not as much there. The world to come, it's not as much comparing to the other guy. Right? It's not about the other guy that I could have been sitting where he is. It's more accurately, there's like, it shows you where your seat was supposed to be. It shows you like that there's an empty seat right there, right behind the dugout, on third base, on the third baseline, and there's an empty seat. And that seat, like there's a big like light over that seat. And it shows you like that was supposed to be your seat. And you're like up there looking at it from the bleachers with like binoculars, and you can see it, but you can't go there. Okay, so it's more about the feeling of not the comparison to other people. That's in this world. That's in the olam hasheker. In the olam ha'emes, it's about comparison to myself, and who I had to become, who I could have been and didn't become, because I was looking to lighten the burden upon myself in this world.
David.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Les
Les.
has his virtual hand up, so we'll give him a.
I'm wondering if it's possible to go back to the most basic level. What I'm thinking of is this is all tied to a sense of purpose, that and purpose leads to some objective scale that you might be able to determine that would include both the physical and the spiritual, that has to do with the depth and intensity of the joy we feel. And the main task is figuring out what that purpose is. To the extent that we're ignorant of Torah, or we willfully are ignorant of Torah in particular, we set up a standard for ourselves, which is not nearly as high as is available. And so the process is first a kind of self-instruction, an examination of what the options actually are. It's easy to submit to the physical because there's less urgency and less difficulty. And that's a very seductive kind of choice to make. But I think the case that you're making is the intent overall is the infinite joy and depth and a sense of what life can be. And if we can kind of put those pieces together, the next question is, what is the standard that qualifies me to go as far as I can go?
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of looking at it, and a worthwhile sort of system to try to set up for yourself and try to answer some of those key questions, and then create a plan based on that.
I'm also thinking that for outreach, the way to engage people is to talk about how the path that you're suggesting can actually elevate their sense of joy and satisfaction. So instead of talking about what's right or what God wills, we're talking about a more personal sense of what will bring me the greatest satisfaction when all is said and done. And I think the ego is the constant there of wanting affirmation and wanting status, and that becomes a part of what we're striving for.
Right. I think you're right. The challenge, I think, in outreach and Kiruv really though is, people have a very far in the notion of understanding, like, this whole idea of like the world to come, spiritual pleasure, eternity in the world to come, spiritual connection, access to the divine light. These are all very like, these are not ideas that these are not the things that people are looking for. That you're trying to sell them something that they're not looking for, which is why, it's a very, very hard, if you're in sales, you always want to be selling something that people need and want, or let's say like this, something that people know they need, right? Of course they need this. Of course they need Torah, but they don't know they need Torah. They don't think they need it. So they think they're just fine without it. It's like selling vitamins. No one really thinks they need vitamins, but if you're selling, insulin, somebody who needs insulin, they know they need insulin. They know it. Yeah. Yeah.
David, it seems to me that even if you're talking to someone who doesn't believe in Olam Haba, all of this is still the way you want to lead your life. At your funeral, what would you rather have? Someone in their eulogy say he had 5 homes, he had a business, he was a great golfer, or he started a charity where he did this and this and this and this. I mean, it's just let's say a template for living in this world, even if you don't believe in Olam Haba.
Right. No, I think that's true for sure. It's definitely true. And and I think that's something that's a good way to sell it, so to speak.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Isn't it also sort of how you look at your status? Like your dad was just saying, 5 homes and good golfer. But if you look at somebody like Warren Buffett, he lives in like a $200,000 house. He's one of the richest men in the world and donated half his money to charity. So, some people would drive by his house, and if they didn't know who he was, say, he doesn't have high status.
Right. Which is right. I mean, but how many people are like that? I mean, that's it. We all talk about Warren Buffett because he's the as they say, the Yotze Dothan. He's the one that sort of like, he's the one that broke the rule. But for every Warren Buffett, there are 99 people, that think that they do have status because they have a big house or whatever.
And then the other thing is like status or happiness. A lot of it is how you look at it. It's not a real thing always. It's, you know, some, right?
100%. That's absolutely true. Right. You know, there's a million stories like that, and you know, about people like that, you know, great stories like that. But yeah, of course, ultimately it's about how do I view it? You know, all the great tzaddikim, all the great righteous, holy rabbis and rabbis and all these people, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them were people of like, you wouldn't even necessarily know who they were. You know, they weren't. They would walk around and they would, you know, they were poor. They were just like everybody else, but they were great holy giants a lot of times. And those were the real tzaddikim. Those are the people that are sitting, you know, right behind home plate. And like you said, you live in an upside down world. You know, those people are not going to get a lot of honor and respect, and you know, in this world necessarily. On, you know, they're not going to, not on social media and not in whatever. But the reality is that those are the people that have dedicated their lives to spirituality and spiritual growth. And when they get to the world to come, the world of truth, the world of emes, you know, they're going to be happy. That's, by the way, you know, one of the things that's just in general is interesting. It's just that whole construct of there's Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, this world, the world to come. We're familiar with those terms, but I think this might be a new idea that we're introducing over here. That Olam Hazeh, this world, is called Olam HaSheker, the world of falsehood and illusion. And Olam Haba is the world of emes, the world of truth. And the reason for that is, I mean, it's, you know, in this world, you can pull the wool over your own eyes, and you can live very easily all kinds of illusions, and you know, and you can fool yourself, and you can convince yourself, and you can rationalize anything, you know, and that's what even people who do horrible things rationalize them in such a way where they have justified their actions and they think they're okay. But even not horrible people, just, you know, you just, in this world we can do that. In the next world, there's no more illusion. What is reality is reality. Emes is the world of truth. You know, that's why, like, it's an interesting question. Interesting question comes up in halacha regarding what happens when parent instructs a child that, let's say, for example, they instruct the child that they want to be, after their death, they want to be cremated, which we know, like, is not only is it not the Jewish custom and tradition, but it's a very negative, destructive thing for a person's soul. If they, you know, if they choose to be cremated, and it's painful for the soul. It's an experience of real disorientation at best for the soul. And now the parent dies. Okay, and now the child says, "I don't know what to do. I'm torn, because on one hand, my father or my mother told me that when they die, they want to be cremated. On the other hand, I know that that's like the worst thing in the world I could possibly do for them." So they come to you, you know, they come to the rabbi and they say, "What should I do? Should I honor their wishes, or should I do what I know is the right thing?" So I've been asked this question many times. And the answer to that question is, if you could ask them right now, but you can't because they're not here. But if you could ask them right now that they've left Olam HaSheker, the world of falsehood and illusion, and they've entered the Olam HaEmes, the world of truth and absolute reality, and now they're there, and you could ask them now, "What do you want me to do? Do you still want me to cremate you?" I promise you that they would say to you, "No, please don't. I didn't understand. I didn't know. I lived with an illusion. I thought it was okay, but now I live in the world of emes. I'm in the world of reality. I see truth as it is. I definitely don't want you to cremate my computer. I please, no. I'm begging you not to." Right? but you can't ask them because they're gone. But so that's what I always tell the person. I say, you're feeling bad because you feel like you're going against their wishes. You're not going against their wishes. You're going against what they said were their wishes. But right now, I promise you, their wishes are completely different than what they told you they were before they passed away. That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But anyway. Okay. And I think maybe this is probably a good place to stop. Let me just mark this. Any other questions or thoughts or comments on this? There's a lot more to talk about over here, but we'll continue this next week.
I did have a thought about Les and his seat status. He must be in the front row.
Les and his what status?
Seat status. He must be in the front row.
Why is that?
You don't know I must be in the front row? It's an old commercial.
Oh, no, I missed that one.
Okay.
But I agree. I do think Les is in the front row. Okay, what else? Anything else?
Wait a minute. I'll pay my pledge. You don't have to go through this exercise.
Wait, I have a question for Steve. Steve, how is it possible that 1 minute ago I got a text on a group chat that we're both on that was sent by you?
You can delay something, like if I sent it like at 8.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Got
Got it.
did. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Since I live in the world of falsehood and illusion, I'll believe that.
I'm a good,
But in the Olam Emes, huh?
I'm a good multitasker.
That's it. We're all good multitaskers. I responded to the text at the same time. You didn't even notice. No, I didn't. All right. You guys are awesome. Have a great day. Enjoy.
Thank you.
And,
See ya.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Great class, David.
Thank you.